For those of you new to After Effects, I want to first of all welcome you to an application that I think is going to bring a lot of magic into your life because it's awesome and it can do a lot of cool things. So before we can actually make magic, we have to know about the tools and the workspace we're dealing with. So let's talk about the interface. Well, up here we have some tools that give you quick access to functions that you're going to be using throughout your comps. So you have tools like your Bezier pen tool, you have your horizontal type tool, and when you click down, you have your vertical type tool. And you'll notice that After Effects is smart enough to change what's going on in the interface as you choose the tool. Let me demonstrate that for you. I'll go back to this tool here, and you'll notice that when I clicked on the characters, this panel popped up by itself, which was kind of interesting. So when I clicked on this, it showed up. If I click on my brush tool, the brushes panel opens up, so I can choose paintbrushes. So it's smart enough to change based on what you select. These windows here are called panels, and I talk about how you can move them around in this tutorial, so definitely check that out. You will see that elsewhere in this tutorial, how you can actually change the interface to your own liking. Over here is our project panel, and this is like mission control. This is where you're going to bring all of your elements for your compositing. So as you can see here, this is a cowboy illustration I did, and this is ready to be composited with something else. So I can, for example, double click in this area and bring in a saloon backdrop, drag it into the layers panel, and now there's a saloon behind the cowboy, as you can see there. So I can just scale that down a little bit, and now we have a saloon. So that's how it works for the most part. So our layers give us the ability to rearrange things, to animate things, and so on. Over here we have other panels. As I mentioned before, these change and they're context sensitive. We have a search or help field that you can enter information into to find things. We also have other fields that help us find things like special effects. So you can type, for example, 3D, and everything that has that in there shows up in here. So when you're looking for certain effects, you type what you're looking for and it shows up. When you're done, hit the X and you can search again. We also have in After Effects something called a timeline, and that's what this area is down here. This is the current time indicator, this little guy here, and you can move it around and you can scrub or move through your animation or your movies. And we have our time, and we have these lines here that represent the layers we have. When you click on a layer, the layer that's selected changes color in the timeline. Of course, in an application like this, we have a standard toolbar, which is at the top of the application, and you can access much of the functionality up here. Also, you can use the shortcuts when appropriate. So if I go to the File menu, we see these little shortcuts over here. So to open a new project on a Mac, it would be Command O. On the Windows platform, it would be Control O. So this is After Effects, all right? We have panels, we have our viewport, we have our timeline, we have our layers, we have our render queue. We want to render things out and make a finished product or footage. We have our effects, and we also have the ability to go to the window menu and choose other panels that we want to deal with. We also have the ability to work on certain effects in After Effects on its own layer. Now this is kind of different from the layers we're used to. So down here, as you can see, we have the cowboy on his own layer and the saloon on its own layer. But there are certain effects and certain tools like the brand new Roto brush that will not work on a regular comp window like this. So we have to go to another individual layer of this element. So this is the Roto brush. I'll click on it one time, and don't worry, I'm going to talk about this guy later on, but as you see, I move my mouse in this window and my cursor is still the arrow instead of the Roto brush tool. So how do I get to a new layer? Easy. Go down to your layers and simply double click on an element, and now the cowboy is in a whole new window. So here's the comp window, here's the layer window, and now our Roto brush tool is ready to go. So this is something that's really important, because if you don't see your tool working, you might have to simply double click on your footage to create a new layer, apply that effect, and you can always go back to your comp and see that effect take place. So that is a quick look at the workspace that is by default. But let me show you another quick little trick. there are pre-built workspaces that change based on what you need to do that day. So if you look over here where it says workspace, we have standard, and we also have other ones. So if you really have a very animation intensive workday, click on animation, and all the tools for animation, like our controls, the smoother, the wiggler, the motion sketch, all those things activate. Have a lot of work to do with effects? Your effects tools show up. See, our effects control showed up here, and our project panel kind of disappeared. If you want to do a very minimal workspace and just focus on your comp and your timeline, great way to work. When you're doing motion tracking, the motion tools show up. So we have our tracker right here ready to go. When you want to just paint, your paint tools show up. So we have our paint tool, we have our playback tools, and we have everything ready for paint. Here's our brushes, and we're ready to paint. So we can go to standard, which we were at before, and we can also go to text so that you can create logos or any kind of type effects that you want to deal with. And last but not least, we have undocked panels, because currently these panels are all docked, and I like them that way so they all stay where I want them and they're all nice and neat. To get back where you were, simply go back to standard. And if you experiment with the panels and you decide that you messed up a little bit, you can always go over here and reset that back to standard the way it was when you first installed After Effects. So that is the workspace, and you'll be very familiar with this by the time we learn more about this really amazing application.